If you're not already familiar with our work and haven't subscribed to our email list, I'd encourage you to follow us on social media using the handle BetterUtah on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and you can join our list at betterutah.org. Together with our debate partner, the John R. Park Debate Society at the University of Utah, we believe that we're the only organization hosting state legislative level debates in the state. In addition to our legislative debates, our past debates have included municipal debates, school board debates, and this past year, many of you may have seen a debate for the candidates in the special election to replace Jason Chaffetz in Congressional District 3. This season, we look forward to a robust series of primary debates as the one we're hosting. Other legislative debates. We actually have several county attorney debates, and we're looking forward to a number of congressional debates as well. Finally, we'll be hosting a series of panel discussions on the ballot initiatives, which will qualify for the ballot this November. And as of today, you may have seen 3 of the 4 look like they qualify. We believe the success of our debate program can best be summed up by one of our early audience members who commented as she left, "I came with an open mind and I left with a lawn sign." We hope that many of you may feel that way after you leave tonight. Our debate series partner, the John R. Park Debate Society, was founded in 1869. It's hosted dozens of campaign debates and issue forums over the last decade, featuring community organizations as diverse as the Utah Minutemen and the American Civil Liberties Union, and political figures as diverse as Governor Gary Herbert and former Salt Lake City Mayor Rocky Anderson. The Debate Society was recognized as the 2016 University of Utah Beacon of Excellence and has been ranked in the top 10 nationally and first in the Pac-12 by the National Parliamentary Debate Association. The director of the Debate Society and tonight's debate moderator is Dr. Michael Middleton. In addition to being the Debate Society's director, Michael is an assistant professor of argumentation and public discourse in the Department of Communication at the University of Utah and has over 20 years of experience in competitive debate. I'd like to welcome all of you tonight and to thank our candidates, Jen Dailey-Provost, Igor Limansky, Darin Mann, and Jacquelyn Orton. I'd like to also extend our thanks to our Debate Society partner, our host tonight, the Utah Museum of Contemporary Art, to members of the press, and of course to all of you for taking time out of your schedules to participate so directly in our democracy. Finally, since we are live streaming this, I'm going to ask everyone to pull out your phones and silence them. But while you have them out, if there's anyone in the audience who is not registered to vote, or the one person here who might not be, I'd encourage you to do so, and you can do so from the comfort of your chair right here by texting the word VOTERISE, V-O-T-E-R-I-S-E, to 788-683. And if you, please remember, if you will be 18 by election day, you can register for this election and vote in the primary. So with that, I'd like to turn things over to our moderator for the evening, Dr. Michael Middleton. Sit down and get comfortable. We're going to be here a while.
Good evening. My name is Mike Middleton, and I'm the director of the John R. Park Debate Society at the University of Utah. I'll be your moderator for tonight's debate and look forward to facilitating a conversation between the 4 candidates with us who are vying to represent the Democratic Party for a seat in the Utah House of Representatives representing District 24 later this fall. I'll invite each of them to introduce themselves in a moment, but first I would like to take an opportunity to summarize the format of tonight's debate. Before I do, please join me in thanking Chase Thomas and Josh Canner of the ABU Education Fund, an affiliate organization of Alliance for a Better Utah, aimed at improving voter education and encouraging voter participation, for organizing this evening's debate. Tonight's debate will be organized in 3 parts. Once I invite, or the candidates are already on stage, so they'll get 2 minutes to introduce themselves in just a moment. Following that, we'll engage in a moderated discussion, during which time each candidate will have an opportunity to answer each question. Their answers will be limited to 2 minutes each. The issues the candidates will discuss during this portion of the debate were drawn from issues suggested by each candidate, but members of the U's John R. Park Debate Society wrote final questions. Neither candidate has had the opportunity to preview those questions. During this portion of the discussion, I reserve the right to ask follow-up questions of any of the candidates, and they'll have 1 minute to respond. Finally, each candidate will have 3 minutes to offer closing remarks. The order of introductions, questions, and closing statements has been predetermined by drawing numbers, and there's a timekeeper in the auditorium right here in the front row, the red chair, who will be helping you keep track of time. So if you haven't already, please follow Josh's advice and turn off your phones. And with that, we'll begin with introductions. And by drawing numbers, the first candidate to introduce themselves will be Darin Mann.
Thank you. First off, thank you to the host for putting on this debate, and thank all of you for coming and engaging in the democratic process. I am an urban farmer and an environmental advocate, and I stand for our people and speak for our planet. My name is Darin Mann. When Abdi Muhammad was shot, I was there, advocating for justice and the creation of community control boards. When native sovereignty was under attack, I was there, locked to the floor in Wells Fargo in direct opposition to the attacks on native peoples and our public lands. When our rivers were under siege and we needed somebody to reach across the aisle, I was there, taking legislators on river trips to show them the beautiful landscapes that their decisions would destroy. I did this to understand how together we could build a better Utah. By doing so, I was able to positively pass legislation by harnessing the power of the coalitions I have built. And through my career as an advocate, I have noticed that we have to transcend politics as usual and get money out of our political systems. That is why I am and have pledged to run a people-funded campaign so that we can have community leaders represent our constituencies and not people who can buy seats. It is of the utmost importance that we have that for our democracy. Unlike speaking to what is popular, I have always been the one to act on what is right. Because in these trying times, we need somebody who is willing to act. Somebody who will carry the burdens of our time with unwavering stamina. I am that person. I am that person because we need it. We need the future that I know we can have. One free from crippling student debt, unlivable wages, and a dying planet. Instead, I will stand for a better future. I will stand for us, all of us, our mothers, our fathers, our brothers, and our sisters. So together we can regenerate the power of our people and our planet. So stand with me and let's advocate for clean air, clean energy, healthy food, and healthy people. Strong children and a resilient people. Thank you so much.
Next, welcome, and we'll give everyone our applause at the beginning and then reserve it for the end of the debate after introductions. Ms. Jacquelyn Orton.
First of all, thank you, Mike and Josh and the ABU crew and the Debate Society for having us here tonight. I appreciate it. You know, when you're building a house, there's a big difference between someone who sits on a sidewalk and watches others build the home versus someone who picks up a hammer and some nails and puts them together to build that home from the ground up. I am the kind of candidate who has built legislation from the ground up. I've written it, I've helped pass it through the House and Senate, and I've had it signed into law. And I've done it on a bipartisan basis. Before I was even 30, in my mid-20s, I was going toe-to-toe with Newt Gingrich and the Republicans in D.C. to pass legislation that our president would agree to sign, President Clinton. 3 times I was invited to the White House to bill signing ceremonies to celebrate my work on legislation. In 2012, I went toe-to-toe with John Boehner when he was the House Majority, actually he was the House Blue Leader, because he removed AP test fee waivers for low-income students from our federal budget. In 5 days' time, I had led a national coalition in restoring $42 million to the budget to help low-income students go to college. I've done this time and again. I helped President Obama with his Bears Ears designation, building coalitions. I do it in the legislature every year. And I want to bring that kind of real experience, that kind of leadership to HD24. I appreciate you being here tonight. Thanks for joining us.
Next will be Ms. Jen Dailey-Provost.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you, Josh, and thank you, everybody, for taking a busy evening out of your schedules to be here tonight. I am very, very honored to be part of this race and to run among such fantastic candidates. It is an honor to live and serve in a strongly Democratic district in the state of Utah, which is so very red. So I was raised by a single mother, and we lived on the edge of poverty, but as a child, I never knew that. I had a meal in my tummy every night. I had a bed to sleep in every single evening. And in retrospect, I recognize that things were tight for us, but I was also extremely lucky because I was raised by a mother who taught me that to those who much is given, much is expected. And I have carried that throughout my life. I have dedicated my life to one of service. I found myself a single mother about 8 years ago, and happily I'm remarried and have another baby. So I have a happy ending. But when I was a single mother, I went to graduate school, specifically to get an MBA so that I could run nonprofits. Because all I wanted to do in this world was make it a better place, to model good citizenship for my 3 daughters. I have worked at the Capitol here in Utah for the last decade. I have worked on hundreds of bills because it means a lot to me, because I know, I have seen every day in my work at the Capitol that we can make progressive progress in this state. Our representative is fantastic and well-loved, and she has been an incredible mentor of mine. She taught me almost everything I know in working at our Utah Capitol. But I have a breadth of experience that I alone can bring to this job. And I really want to do that. And I will serve regardless. I will always live a life of service. But I hope to take my experience to the next level to make a difference in our state. Thank you.
Last will be Mr. Igor Limansky.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Josh and ABU. It's really wonderful to be here. It's also really wonderful to see so many of our supporters sitting next to each other. So my name is Igor Limansky, one of the many great candidates for House District 24. My background's in grassroots organizing. I grew up here in Utah, and maybe it's because I'm 6'6", maybe it's because I'm named Igor, maybe it's because I'm a Democrat, but I never really felt like I fit in Utah. I'm sure a lot of folks in this room have felt that way too. It wasn't until 2008 when Barack Obama ran for office that I decided to get involved in politics. And the reason I got involved was because of the first time I could see someone who I thought could represent me. My mom's from Egypt, my dad's from France, and to see a multicultural leader out there representing the views that matter to me, he taught me that my story wasn't what separated me from the American story, it's what made me a part of it. And I, for the first time, felt represented. And so for the last 10 years, I've been doing grassroots organizing. And for me, grassroots organizing is a term people throw around a lot. To define it in my work, it's been building the voice of the community to get the power we need to make the change that's necessary. And I think we all see the change that is necessary in our communities. Specifically when you see families that are being torn apart by ICE agents, when you have kids who suffer from asthma who can't go outside. These are things that every one of us agrees we have to fix. And the only way to fix that is to use grassroots organizing, use the voice of the people to make that change in legislation. I'd love to use my experience to bring the diverse voices and interests of House District 24 into the legislature. And I think my 10 years of grassroots organizing experience is what we need in a time when we're all frustrated, upset, and trying to find a way to make a difference. Thank you.
So with our first question, we'll give each of you a chance to talk a bit more about your campaign philosophy. According to the Utah Lieutenant Governor's Office, in 2016, only 26.3% of voters participated in primary elections, and the Salt Lake Tribune reports that only about 60% of voters participated in the 2016 general election in Utah. The same article suggests that a combination of non-competitive races and a general sense of limited voter efficacy contributed to these numbers that leaves Utah ranked 39th in the nation. How have you worked to engage with your constituents to communicate the importance of their participation? And if nominated or elected, how will you work to maintain the active engagement of your constituents? And we'll begin with Jacquelyn.
I decided when I decided to run for this seat that I was going to run it door to door, face to face, person to person. That's how I've always done politics, and I've been in politics pretty much my entire life. I believe that it is an engaging process. That is why in 2016, before I ever dreamed of running for office, I was out walking for over 20 candidates in Salt Lake County alone. When the ballot initiative started, we run academic camps on the Navajo reservation. And I know that the Navajo are completely disengaged. They have been so disenfranchised by their lack of representation for 20 some odd years that they no longer even register to vote. So I took our ballot initiatives down to the reservation several times. I registered voters. I explained what a ballot initiative was and what the ballot initiatives could mean to them in their communities. And as I am walking, I am doing it door to door, myself, my children, my friends. People who do not know me do not go out, in support of me. I only have people who know and understand my vision for our district out there representing me. And I feel when push comes to shove, when I'm out there and I knock on the door, and we registered over a dozen voters during the signature gathering process, and we've registered another dozen since we started walking door to door. And I just, I feel like this entire thing is going to be run face to face, one face to face, one person at a time.
Thank you. Jen.
So I actually really love canvassing. It's the highlight of my campaign. I love knocking doors. I love walking the district and visiting with constituents to hear about their experiences, their thoughts, to broaden my depth of understanding for what affects the people in our district. And I think that is the hallmark of a good legislator, not just to engage with constituents when he or she is an elected official, as a candidate, but as an elected official. And so engagement with town halls and constant dialogue with people who live in the district is critical. But one thing that I will say about myself is I'm smart enough to know what I don't know. And I have my areas of expertise as a policy advocate at the Capitol. But a legislator has to be an expert in a lot of things. And so I have spent many years finding people who live in the district who are experts in their field, so that when I'm working at the Capitol, either as an advocate, as I am now, or if I have the opportunity to serve as your legislator for House District 24, that I have those experts on speed dial, people that I can find who can explain to me the deep implications that come with the passage or failure of a bill. And those are the networks that I'm building, that I have spent my career building, that I'm passionate about. Understanding what gets you up at night, what you're motivated by, gun rights, gun control legislation, access to health care, education. These are all things that are deeply important to every single one of us, and the expertise in our district is vast and deep and passionate. And I have every intention of making sure that we tap into that at every turn in Capitol.
Igor.
So specifically about the voter turnout, I just want to point out, so in House District 24, we've got 6,000 registered Democrats, 4,000 registered Republicans, and 12,000 registered unaffiliated. And most of those unaffiliated will not get a ballot to vote in this election. And so I think there's a number of problems when we talk about voter turnout. There's the systems problem of, we've got these party primaries that not everybody wants to participate in, and they don't feel entirely aligned with one party or another, and they feel excluded from the process. A representative gets elected, and they feel like they didn't vote for that person, and so it's not their representative. There's also a human problem, right? we don't think that we matter in the state of Utah if you're a Democrat. And I think the amount of Democratic gatherings I go to where someone makes the joke, oh, these are all the Democrats in the room. If the issue is that we feel infected. Something we've been doing in our campaign is a technique called deep canvassing. And the heart of deep canvassing is how do you connect with the values of a voter and the stories that have formed those values. And so it's much longer conversations at the door with voters. I know we've canvassed a few of you, and so you've probably experienced this. But that's at the heart of making people care about the process and care about participating. It's about identifying what they care about and helping them to understand that we're not so far apart on issues. When it comes to the legislature, there are a lot of legislators who aren't so good on some issues, but have had personal experiences that have really informed them on homelessness issues, on the statute of limitations for sexual assault. We've seen Republicans pass legislation that surprised us because of their personal history and their values. And if we're going to pass progressive legislation, we have to focus on those stories and we have to focus on our connection.
Finally, Darin.
Thank you. Well, as the only candidate that collected my signatures without paying signature gatherers or paying staff to knock doors for me, I really believe that it is important that we engage all of our people in the process. That's why I hold community barbecues every other Friday, where we do potluck styles. And as an urban farmer, I share my food and that comes from the good earth around us. And I really try to cultivate a sense of community, breaking bread with one another. And the conversations that come from that are inspiring. And I am really, truly humbled by the hundreds of volunteers that I have come out with me each week to knock doors. And they do it because they believe in the movement. They believe in the movement of empowering our people and working towards the regeneration of our planet. They are tired of the status quo, and they want something new, they want something different, and they want somebody who's going to speak to their issues and be unrelenting in that endeavor. And so I'm very grateful that I have their support. And by engaging people who are truly passionate in your cause, you're able to knock doors of unaffiliated voters and really start to get into the nuts and bolts of why they are passionate. And then, lo and behold, they're coming to your community barbecue, they're coming to your events, they're starting to canvass and knock doors for you. And then they're really excited about your campaign. So I think it's about really speaking to the people that you want to represent. And I have really spent many, many years cultivating coalitions of support through different grassroots communities throughout the district and the city. And now it is coming to bear that it's just awe-inspiring to see all the people that are willing to put their bodies on the line for this movement of regeneration for our people on the planet. So I'm just very grateful.
Thank you all. I think that for right now we'll go ahead and move into the next question. So the next topic we're going to discuss are the ballot initiatives that a couple of you mentioned in your opening statements. This year, Utah voters will likely go to the polls to vote on up to 4 citizens' initiatives: medical marijuana, Medicaid expansion, redistricting, and primary elections. Since we don't have time in tonight's debate to address each of those issues separately, I'd like to invite you to outline your positions on these initiatives. Which, if any, do you think are most critical? And do you have any concerns about any of these initiatives should they pass? We'll begin with Jen.
Thank you. So I heard the news today that Count My Vote may not have made it onto the ballot in November, which is actually very disappointing because all 4 of the candidates that you see down here all collected their signatures, and I actually think that there are 3 that didn't have paid signatures. So there's your rebuttal. So I am disappointed if Count My Vote doesn't make it to the ballot because people in this state love the signature gathering process. It is engaged, obviously, an amazing array of candidates, and it encourages people to be more engaged in the process, and I love the signature gathering route. The Count My Vote ballot initiative would have decreased the number of signatures that we have to gather to get on the ballot, and 1,000 for a House race is hard. It's really, really hard. And so I'm disappointed if that one didn't make it. I would say in order of importance, it's a tie between medical cannabis and Medicaid expansion for me. Actually, it's a 3-way tie. Redistricting's got to come in as well. They're all critical. So I've got 1 minute left, so I'm going to try to hammer through this. Medicaid expansion is something that I've been working on at the legislature since the inception of the ACA. We have fought for this. We have sweated, cried, bled over this this initiative. It is absolutely essential for so many reasons, not to mention our disenfranchised low incomes, community members, people struggling with addiction and homelessness, redistricting. The reason Democrats don't get out and vote is because we know that our vote doesn't matter. If all the Democrats in the state are clumped into one little tiny district and you don't feel like your vote matters, you won't come out. But if we have fair boundaries, we're going to get that done. Medical cannabis. I am very, very honored to have the endorsement of Christine Stenquist, who's the president of Truce, someone who I've fought side by side on medical cannabis. This is critical for patient care, for pain management, and to finally get not a silver bullet, but one answer of many to solving the opioid crisis in our state.
Igor.
So I think the ballot initiatives are a perfect example of watching the legislature react to people organizing and making their voices heard. So for the past 8 to 10 years, we've had no movement on Medicaid expansion. We have no movement on medical cannabis. The moment people organize, the moment they start gathering signatures, the legislature passes a very small and disappointing expansion of Medicaid and a right to try for medical cannabis, which is also really insulting. I'm really honored to be on the advisory committee for Better Boundaries, and seeing people volunteer to drive to St. George and to Moab on the weekend and collect signatures because they care about this is the exact sort of community organizing that's important to me. I know that can make a difference. For me, the fundamental, most important one of these is Better Boundaries. It is about one person, one vote. It's about feeling represented in the communities you're a part of and having someone you can look at who can carry your voice. And that's essential, right? As essential are medical cannabis and Medicaid expansion. We see time and time again that the majority of Utahns want this, and the legislature isn't actually passing it. And so I couldn't be more excited that we made it. I was really hopeful for Count My Vote. Count My Vote offered me the opportunity to get on this ballot. We were one of 3 candidates who made it through convention, but before that, the last 20 years, there's essentially been the representative chooses the person who follows them, they endorse them, they get enough votes in convention, and there hasn't been a primary in this district for over 20 years. And Count My Vote made it possible to have 4 great candidates all be able to voice their opinion, and I hope that there's a lawsuit and we can actually figure out how to make sure that Count My Vote gets on the ballot.
Thank you. Darin.
For me, I would say the Better Boundaries Initiative is really important to me because democracy and diversity of ideas is really, really fundamental in how we decide how we're going to move forward as a state and as a people. So I really want to ensure that we have a wide array of people that have a chance to be heard. And so gerrymandering is definitely in the way of that. And I was getting a third-party redistricting committee will allow us to really have the democracy that we all deserve so much. That's also why I support instituting term limits where we can have a wide array of communities that can run for office. You only have a representative that serves for 4 terms, total of 8 years, and the senator for 2. You allow people to not only move up if they serve with dignity and distinction, but also you have opportunity for new and diverse voices to have access to the halls of power, which I think is very, very important for us to have. So I was very excited to see those go through. But I'm also really excited about the medical marijuana bill because it is the first step that we can take towards the overall decriminalization of marijuana, in the overall fight of decriminalizing nonviolent drug offenses as well, because that creates a vicious cycle that leads to homelessness and other systemic problems that we have in our society. So it is very important that we, move in the direction of passing medical marijuana and the overall decriminalization of marijuana. I'm really excited about those 2 initiatives. They couldn't have come at a better time where, our democracy is threatened and also our people are suffering under unjust laws. So I'm very excited about those 2 initiatives.
First, I'll just say I support all of those in addition to Our Schools Now, which we have a substitute for as well. In 2016, I was on the ground floor of the discussions about Better Boundaries. And I was not on the committee because I was the first of all of us to get into this race. My neighbors came to me and asked me to join in, and I was not able to be in a partisan race and serve on the committee. But I told the executive director of the Better Boundaries program that I think that is the most critical thing we will vote on this year, because it's everything. It affects every single thing we do in this state. It affects every vote on every piece of legislation. For us, we have 15% of elected officials. I think it's 11% statewide who are Democrats. But we have, when we go to the ballot, we vote over 30% for Democrats on the ballot. We have a serious problem in this state that we can only solve by giving us one vote for one person and having an independent redistricting commission. I am really sad that John Huntsman Sr. did not live to see medical cannabis make it to the ballot. He was a strong supporter. I am so sad to see people vote if they don't make it. And I think that it's a real challenge to each of us to continue that fight.
Thank you. Next, we'll turn our attention to the topic of education and Our Schools Now initiative that you all were discussing. The Salt Lake Tribune reported in March that following the compromises between the legislature and efforts made by the Our Schools Now initiative, some were hailing 2018 as the year of education in Utah. However, even if some of the most optimistic projections, these compromises will add $845 in per pupil spending per year, prove to be true, that still leaves Utah in the bottom 10% of states in annual per pupil education funding. All of this is to say that this year's victories are only part of the effort to improve Utah's public education system. What policies or reforms do you think are still needed to achieve Utah's best educational outcomes? We'll begin with Igor.
So in my full-time job, I work in Title I schools, and I work with a lot of kids who need as many opportunities as they can to succeed. You end up seeing kids who come to school without shoes because their parents have sold them for drugs. You end up seeing kids who come to school hungry. 1 in 3 Utah kids come to school hungry. We need wraparound services in our Title I schools to make sure that the basic needs of these kids are met so they can be ready to learn. Something that I've had the opportunity to work a lot on is preschool education. In 2014, I got to work on the Utah School Readiness Initiative, which gave us the opportunity to actually extend free preschool to kids from low-income and at-risk families. And I was really fortunate to work on that as the person who was helping to bring together the grassroots coalition to make sure that it was passed. And we were able to do that by bringing together the families of people who were going to be directly affected by this to talk to the legislators. We were able to bring together business interests to talk to a lot of Republican legislators who care a lot about what business interests think. And we were able to say that it is fundamental that a kid starts on track and stays on track in their education. I think one thing that the Our School Now compromise did, obviously I was hoping it was going to get on the ballot and we were going to get twice as much funding. But one thing that I hope that we can do is reduce class sizes. I've gotten to visit schools like Willen Hall, which are not Title I schools, and I've gotten to visit a lot of the schools where I work, and one of the major differences is class size. A teacher cannot teach a class that has over 30 students. And so I hope we can get more education funding, and one of the many things that I'd love to see happen is reduce class sizes and make sure there's wraparound services for kids, particularly in low-income areas.
Darin.
Thank you, Michael. As a kid who grew up in this system, in the educational system of Utah, I think it's really important that we focus on the teachers. They are really the stewards of our future. They garner the hopes and the dreams of our children. And I know I would not be who I am today without the steady hand of those teachers that were behind me, even when I was being a delinquent at times. So that's really important to me. So the stewards of our future need to have the funding adequate to take care of their families, and what comes with that is access to collective bargaining. We really need to strengthen the unions of our teachers so that they can start to bargain with employers for the wages and the benefits that they so rightfully deserve. Because, like my opponent said, we need to ensure that our teachers have the tools necessary to take care of our students. And class sizes are far too large. We need to make sure that they're reduced. And we also need to provide incentives for after-school programs. As a boxing coach, I worked with a nonprofit, State Street Boxing, to teach inner-city kids the study of boxing, the sweet science. And that allowed them an outlet to grow and become productive members of society, that is what school is for. So collective bargaining, so our teachers can really have the tools necessary that they need and the pay they need, as well as after school programs, so that our students can have stability in their lives and they can have mentorship. It is really important to me. Thank you.
Yeah.
As the daughter of two school teachers, a high school special ed teacher and a college professor, I know firsthand what we are in need of here. I'm the only person here, or the only candidate here, whose children have been through the public school system, K through 12. I have almost 10,000 volunteer student hours in classrooms, coaching mock trial for West High School, being on the school board foundation. I've spent the last 20 years in our public schools. And I'll tell you some things that we are missing. We are missing 700 school counselors in this state. As someone who devotes hundreds of hours every year to help underprivileged and marginalized students get into college, I can tell you firsthand, we need those school counselors in our district. We don't need to freeze our property taxes and not fund those very important positions in our schools. We have children from the homeless shelters. We have children who come to us from very disadvantaged situations, and we don't have a way to adequately meet their needs. We run camps on the Navajo reservation, our family does. Those children show up at school not having eaten since school lunch the day before. They live an hour from the closest grocery store. They sometimes don't see their parents for days. Sometimes their parents are absent. They don't even see their grandparents. There are crises in our schools that are not being met, and we need funding now to solve those problems.
Jen.
So, Michael, thank you for your question about the ballot initiative. I was at the Capitol this year when the Our Schools Now folks started debating with the legislators about a compromise. And I was reticent about it because I sincerely think that the ballot initiative would have passed if they hadn't made that compromise. I think we would have the funding sources that were envisioned in that ballot initiative. But they caved, and I shouldn't say that. They compromised, and instead of a tax increase to fund schools, which tracks with the economy, which I think is really important because we have a growing economy, we went to a gas tax, and I have some serious problems with that because the gas taxes don't increase with the economy. It stays pretty flat. As the economy gets better, people drive a little bit more, but not in direct correlation. And I also saw what happened to the Count My Vote people when they compromised with the legislature, and here we are 4 years later embroiled in ridiculous lawsuits trying to get rid of the signature gathering route at the legislature. But really quickly, before my time is up, can we just give a quick shout out to everybody in the room who works in the education system? I mean, honestly, let's give a quick clap. Teaching is exceptionally hard, and not everybody can do it. And we have to learn to value our teachers. We have to pay them more. We have to provide comprehensive childcare for our teachers, because we have over a 50% attrition rate out of the education system for teachers within 5 years of getting out of college. That's ridiculous. So if we can make doing the job more accessible for more of our teachers and finally meet the needs and get classroom sizes and universal pre-K in our state, we might start to move the needle to build the economy that all of these tech companies want to bring to our state. We want to train our kids to meet the economic needs of our growing state in a clean, sustainable way. Thank you.
For our next question, we'll discuss the economy. Earlier this month, the KSL reported that while Utah continues to add jobs to its economy at rates that lead the nation, wages in Utah are lagging significantly behind, both historically and that's predicted to continue into the future. To put that in context, 30 states have a minimum wage higher than Utah. And wages are so low in Utah that one analysis found that a minimum wage worker in the state would have to work 76 hours per week to afford the average one-bedroom apartment. However, this past session, the legislature rejected bills attempting to increase the minimum wage to $12 per hour. If elected, what policies, including minimum wage revisions or incentives to employers, would you encourage your legislative colleagues to consider to ensure that full-time workers in Utah are earning a living wage and that issues like housing affordability begin to be addressed? Darin.
Thank you, Michael. First and foremost, we do need to raise the minimum wage. I am an advocate of the $15 minimum wage. There was a recent study that said to rent a 2-bedroom house here in Utah, it would take a wage of $17.02 to adequately pay for that rent and still be able to live your life. That is atrocious, and we need to do something about that. But we also need to be very tactical with the way that we approach this issue, because, like was mentioned by the moderator, Lynn Hemingway's bill was unfortunately struck down in the legislative session. That's why I also, in the advocacy of building resilient communities, we need to start incentivizing ESOPs, employee stock ownership programs, and cooperatives, so we can begin to give employees access to owning the very companies that they are working for. That is how we are going to empower the working class, by giving our people ownership over the labor that they produce. It is very, very important to me, and I've actually learned from the example of my father, who runs an ESOP, to see firsthand what that looks like and how empowering it is when you get a profit-sharing check for the hard work that you put into your company. So I want us to really double down on building our working class and making sure that we are resilient people. But we cannot forget that we also have to raise the minimum wage, because it is just how we're going to start to build that future that we all want. So again, incentivizing cooperatives and giving employees right of first refusal, which allows workers to buy the company if an owner wants to sell it. We really need to start strengthening our working class.
Having come from a home where we were proud members of the union, and having been raised in union, in a union home, and still being involved, I've raised my children going to the Labor Day picnics and supporting union functions. I am really concerned that we are losing our identity as Americans in this country. And it is not clear anywhere than right here in Utah. And, yes, we need to raise the minimum wage, but we need to start, it's a systemic problem. It goes to, tax reform. It goes to the need for universal pre-K. It goes to all of those things, affordable housing, affordable transportation options. transportation that reaches into our communities and is accessible even in bad weather in the winters when we need it the most. There are so many issues that we could address if we had just a few of the opportunities that some of our other, even our surrounding states, even Idaho is passing more progressive tax reform than we are. Sorry, no offense. Sorry. It's a lovely state, but the reality is we have got to start doing better providing for our middle income families. We have just passed taxes that are regressive for lower and middle income families. And we aren't doing anything to counter the negative things that we are saddling our families with. So, that's it.
Jen, I don't know if you want to defend Idaho or either way. Sure.
I said they are.
That's great. There's a reason. There are a lot of good reasons I moved to Utah. I chose to live here. So, one of the things that the greatest hypocrisies that drives me nuts about working at the legislature in our state is that our Republican supermajority loves small government until they don't. And they loved passing a bill that said no municipality or city could set their own minimum wage. And the cost of living in Salt Lake City, Park City accepted, but Salt Lake County certainly is the highest in the state. And we as a city and a county need to have that agency to make those decisions about our economy and our state. If we want to invite employers into our county, into our city, to grow here and bring their technology and bring their jobs, and we want to insist on a higher minimum wage, that needs to be up to our city. And so if I'm lucky enough to serve in this position, one of the first things I'll do actually is to fight every single year, because when you're a Democrat in Utah, you have to fight every single year. You have to be dogged, you have to be tenacious, and I am. I will run legislation to make sure that cities and municipalities can make their own decisions about their own economies. We don't need government overreach. We had another great example this year in the form of the Northwestern Quadrant. We really need to have strong voices, and HD24 has the benefit of being a progressive district. But we also everybody here, I hope that after this primary in HD24 is over, you all pick a race, some other district in the state, and let's go get some more Democrats elected. Because there are a lot of disenfranchised Democrats in the state, and we can flip some seats, we can break a supermajority, and we can finally make a difference in making decisions about our own state and our own city, so that we can provide, so that employers in Salt Lake City can provide a livable wage, so that we can afford our skyrocketing housing costs. And of course, it comes back to affordable housing and making sure we've got responsible economic development.
This is one of those issues where you can see we all have pretty progressive values on this. When I went to college, I helped pay for college through grants, but also through bartending and waiting tips. And I essentially made $225 plus tips. One of Lynn Hemingway's bills that he's trying to propose is a slight increase in the salary for tip wage employees. He's been running it for a number of years, and it hasn't gone anywhere. We do need municipalities to be able to set their own minimum wage. That's just common sense. In a place like Utah, we need to be able to pay employees better wages so they can afford housing and live here. But we also have to make sure that there's a pathway for them to get from a lower paying job to a higher paying job. We have to make sure that they know about opportunities to go to college, and we have to make sure that they know about unions. You can join an apprenticeship program with some of the amazing unions that are here, from the operating engineers to the electrical workers, and after 4 years of your apprenticeship, you're essentially making $80,000, sometimes $100,000 a year. You've got pension, you've got health care, and those are opportunities that we are not putting in front of our kids. And so I think we need to make sure that, number one, that we're making sure that the wages are being increased so people can actually live in a afford to be in the city. And number two, making sure that people who are in lower wage jobs have the opportunities to find higher paying jobs through unions, through education.
Thank you. We're going to sneak in one more question before we go to closing remarks. Prior to the debate, stakeholders had the opportunity to submit questions through ABU's website. One such submission came from the outgoing representative for District 24. Rebecca asked, what is your experience working on a current Utah legislative policy issue, either through time spent on the Hill or other community-based collaborations? Specifically, what is one experience that you've had and the lesson that it taught you that you believe will help make you a good representative for House District 24? And to start with this last question, we'll begin with Jacquelyn.
Wow, I've worked on a lot of legislation in this state over the last 25 years since I got here. One of the, I guess the most successful piece of legislation I have worked on came this legislative session when I worked with the Alzheimer's Association to get a $1 million appropriation for Alzheimer's caregivers to provide training and to provide respite care for them to be able to get away and have a weekend away and be able to afford that when respite care sometimes, costs $200 a day. I know the importance of this legislation because I was an Alzheimer's caregiver for my mom for 7.5 years in my home. And it was a difficult time with small children and, trying to do all the things we do, but it became exceedingly difficult when my husband died unexpectedly in 2009, just about the time that my mother became bedridden with Alzheimer's. And when you have, whether it's Alzheimer's or Parkinson's or, whatever the debilitating illness is, caregivers are not trained. We don't know what we're doing. I didn't know how to dress a wound. I didn't even know how to recognize what was going on because my mother couldn't explain to me. My mom had 2 master's degrees and she was rendered, voiceless for the last 3 years of her life. And so what that taught me was there was a concerted effort at one point to kill that appropriation. And it happened while I was sick with the flu. And I woke up at 5 o'clock in the morning and started a grassroots effort to get that back on track. And it's just, don't give up. And, don't get sick during the legislative process. But that's cool.
Yeah.
Thank you. So, as I mentioned before, I've been at the Capitol every day during legislative session, and so I've worked on a lot of bills. I would say my greatest strength is building collaborations across the political spectrum on every kind of issue that you could imagine. I was really proud in 2014, working with Senator Shizawa to get a bill passed to cover autism care for children in the state. Insurance companies refused to cover it. We now have coverage, and that sunset date has been removed, so that's a permanent part of legislation. That was a really big deal because our legislature doesn't like to mandate what insurance companies have to cover. But we built a great coalition and we got it done. I mentioned Medicaid expansion, and while we fought for that, it still hasn't passed, but we'll keep fighting for it. The important thing going forward is when the ballot initiative passes, that we've got somebody with experience in the legislative process and the relationships already in place so that those bills, those ballot initiatives, when they pass, don't get gutted, because that's still statute. That is still legislation that any legislator can open up and kill or find or change or amend. And, being at the legislature and advocating for a bill, it's really easy to step back and say, hey, look, I passed the bill. But it's so important to remember how many incredibly large number of people that go into passing any bit of legislation. There is legislative counsel, there's the fiscal analyst, there's the sponsor, there's every community member who shows up to testify. And everybody deserves credit, and everybody has a stake in this. The final thing that I'll say is I've spent 8 years digging deep into the social services appropriations budget, which is incredibly complex. It's a $6 billion budget. The Trump administration's tax cuts will bring about almost $100 million in cuts to our social services within the next 2 to 5 years on a rolling basis. I'm already working on trying to make sure that we've got funding to replace those services before our people are harmed.
Igor.
The piece of legislation I've worked on the most is the School Readiness Initiative, which helped extend preschool to kids from low-income families. And I think what's remarkable about that piece of legislation is that in 2014, the only way to get a red conservative state to fund preschool was essentially to have Goldman Sachs put up the money and to pay them back 7% for every kid who got free preschool education and was able to go through K through 12 without needing a real education. That was the only way I was going to fly in Utah, and that's what we did. In 2013, it didn't pass because the reform said it would create a bunch of little socialists, and I think that's a bad thing. So they basically wrote a letter writing campaign, and they made sure that bill got shut down. It was really inspiring to work on that bill, to put together families, and to identify the points of leverage that each legislator had that we knew that if we could work on, we could get their votes. One of the things we did, aside from bringing the voices of the families in, bringing the voices of small businesses and larger businesses in, we were also able to bring J.D. Pritzker, the billionaire investor, because Republicans love billionaire investors, and we were able to know that that was what mattered to these legislators, and if we were able to have a conversation with them about that issue, that they would be able to support it. And now, in the last legislative session, they allocated $33 million. Unfortunately, it's one-time funding. We'd like to see that be ongoing funding. But it's $33 million to fund high-quality preschool programs in the state of Utah, and we don't have to end up paying 7% back to Goldman Sachs at the end. And that's an example of incremental success in legislation that people look at Utah and they say, you guys have free preschool. How did you guys get that passed? And it's an example of working with people to help them understand that their stories, their children matter, and that we can take care of them.
Darin.
As a grassroots organizer that really started cutting my chops and working to save the Bear River, I worked throughout all the different constituencies along the Bear River Basin to really talk with so many different groups: farmers, duck hunters, conservative tax advocates, and I started to build coalitions and hold constituent meetings with Republican legislators. And when you see, hundreds of people in a meeting with a conservative legislator, they start to shake. And then when you go up to the Hill and you bring these duck hunters and their waders, then they go, oh, you're not going away. Because I follow the old adage of a great environmental advocate, Brock Evans: constant pressure, endlessly applied is how we achieve victory. And that, I embody that to the T. I make sure that constituents have access to their legislators. That's why I host every legislative session. Once a week, I host lobby days where I bring hundreds of people up to the Capitol to talk to their legislators, as far north as Cache Valley and as far south as Cedar City. I'll get to St. George eventually. But that is how we do it. We apply grassroots pressure. By doing so, I've been able to pass many bills. One is an urban farming bill allowing farmers to sell produce directly to the consumer. But more importantly, that allowed me bargaining power to help the high school students pass HCR 7, which now allows Utah to talk about climate change and economic stewardship in meaningful manners. Because I went up to Representative Chu and Watkins and they say, you know how crops work. You know how when it quickens, you know how to talk our language. I will vote for this bill because you know what it means to actually grow food and to work with with nature. And that is how we're going to reach across the aisle, is learn how to talk with our rural representatives. Learn how to talk with people who work in the food industry.
All right, let's shift into closing statements. Each candidate will get 2 to 3 minutes to summarize, and we'll go in the reverse order of introductions. So we'll begin with Igor.
Thank you, everybody, for being here. This has been a lot of fun. So my background, like I said, is in grassroots organizing. And what that means to me, particularly in this context, is that the problems that we're talking about are very human problems. They're the problems that are facing everyday men and women who are working for low wages, trying to find housing, trying to buy homes, trying to breathe air. And the only way we're going to succeed in this election, in the legislature, in the state of Utah, is by bringing those stories and building community around those stories that can make our voices heard. That's what I've been doing for the past 10 years of my life. I started on the 2008 Obama campaign. I was fortunate to be the state director in the 2012 campaign, and I led Utah Votes as the executive director. This was a coalition of progressive nonprofits, from teachers' unions, the AFL-CIO, Sierra Club, Equality Utah, and we were able to get the members of those organizations registered. We were able to get them to turn out on elections across the state of Utah, and we were able to get them on the Hill to lobby for legislation that personally mattered to them. When we talk about the amount of people who aren't making enough money to afford housing, we have to find a way to make their voices heard. And unfortunately, they do not have the time to show up at the legislature because they're trying to put food in their children's belly and trying to put a roof over their head. We have the opportunity to represent their voices. We have the opportunity to make sure that every single issue that matters most to us, that we organize on. It's the only thing that's going to save us in the state of Utah. So the thing that matters most to me here is safe communities. That's at the heart, it's at the bedrock of what really matters to me. Like I mentioned, in my job, I work with a lot of undocumented families, and I work with a lot of refugees. This is personally important to me. It's a story that I know, it's my personal background. I know what it's like to change schools every year of my life because we're trying to pay rent and we can't afford the house we live in. The stories, the issues that we're talking about, they're my personal story. They're more than just legislation that we're trying to come up with talking points about. If I am elected, I hope to represent my background, I hope to represent the diverse voices and interests of House District 24.
Once again, thank you for hosting. Thank you for being here. It is an honor to have the opportunity to share my experiences and hopes and aspirations with you. I actually advocated at the Capitol for the first time in the 2009 session, right after the recession. And as a concerned citizen, I just sat in at some committee meetings. And you know what the only thing that was funded fully in 2009 was? Roads. Social services got slashed in almost half. The most disenfranchised, vulnerable citizens in our state got almost nothing. Children with complex disabilities lost their care. Everybody across the spectrum was harmed except for the freeways in our state. And it pissed me off, and it motivated me, and it charged me up. And when I had the opportunity to make this my career, I jumped on it because this work is so important. We all know that there are so many disenfranchised voices in this state. And I do live a life dedicated to service. I will always live a life dedicated to service. Regardless of how this election comes out, I will fight for these things no matter what. I hope to have the opportunity to take my experience and my passion and my hard work to the next level to be that much more effective for the people in this state. Not just in HD24. There are so many Democrats who live in gerrymandered Republican districts whose voice aren't heard. This seat is critical, and I gotta be honest with you, our legislature is 22% female. I'm really, really hopeful that we keep a woman in the seat, with all due respect to our very, very fine candidate. And I know our incumbent feels the same. We need more female voices at the table. We need more moms at the table. We need moms who are raising children in this state who look at that nasty air outside every single day and are concerned about their well-being long-term, their health outcomes 20 or 30 years down the road. I have a very vested stake in the future of our state. I have a 13-year-old, an 11-year-old, and a 1.5-year-old. Yes, she's a caboose. But I will fight. I will be there to fight every day. I always have been. I always will be. I would love to take your voice and represent you, but I'm happy to be a fighter among you, regardless of how things go, and I'm honored by the opportunity to earn your vote and to represent you as Utah Capitol. And thank you again for being here. It is a true pleasure.
Thank you again for having us all here tonight. I feel like the best indicator of the kind of leader someone will be is what they've done when nobody else was looking. And when nobody else was looking, I have been fighting for all of you for 30 years. First, as a credit union lobbyist in DC in my 20s, passing progressive legislation that, can I see a raise of hands, credit union members? Yeah. So all of you, and all of you, if bankruptcy reform was important to you, if you're a government worker and Hatch Act reform was important to you, if it's important to you that we have banks and credit unions in Watts and on Indian reservations and in our Midwestern communities where there are no financial institutions otherwise, I was working for you 30 years ago, before my 30th birthday. I had to retire at age 29 when I married my husband because I had to choose between being a lobbyist and marrying my husband, who was then representing the 3rd Congressional District of Utah. And so I've continued to serve Utah. I have, I've put my heart and my soul into children. The children in this community have grown up in my home. When LGBTQ children were no longer welcome in their homes, I brought them into mine. I've fed them, I've clothed them, we've taken them on our family vacations with us. They are part of our family. And we have serious issues that need to be resolved using strategies that I've been using for 30 years. People up at the legislature, I've known since I came to this state in 1994. I didn't need anyone to escort me and introduce me around because I knew them. And the reality is when I go up to the legislature to represent you, I will be working on the issues that will keep you safe, will keep your family solvent, and most importantly, our children, our future, will be educated, they'll be fed, and they'll be comforted. And those are things that today we can't take for granted in this state. We see it every day. So I hope that you will consider voting for me, supporting me. I would love to talk to you after this. And thank you again, all of you, for coming this evening.
Darin.
Again, thank you all for coming to this debate. It really has been truly inspiring. One of the things that really concerns me as well is also the lack of representation, particularly of the youth. We do not have representation of those who will inherit the consequences of the decisions being made on Capitol Hill. My generation. If I am elected, I will bring an army of citizen advocates that will be the bulwark to blow open the doors of the state legislature so we can really use effective bargaining power that I've hinted to during this debate. I have talked about my extensive work building relationships with farmers and conservative constituencies, duck hunters, and other people who are interested in saving our planet and building resilient communities, whether it's incentivizing co-ops or through empowering the working class. It is our time to really stand together as one and let our voices echo loudly throughout the halls of power. And I am the one that is going to really be the conduit towards that. That is why, again, I have a strong volunteer retinue who are running their shoes ragged. I do not have a paid staff. I have people who believe in our cause, people who believe in the better future we can have. And I am so inspired by that. That is why if you go outside and you look at our signs, they were painted by artists from all over the district. Because, again, it is through empowering all of our people, all of the communities that reside in our district, that we are going to see success. And I am the one that is out there standing and acting for what is right. I have locked myself to the floor against the injustices happening in our state and across the nation. And I have led caravans to help support natives who are fighting in their struggle for native sovereignty, because I believe that we need to come together. We need to have a strong voice that can effectively bargain for the future. And I have proven that through my long history of advocating to save the Bear River, to save the Colorado River, to fight for native sovereignty and for our public lands, and to advocate for workers' rights. I will be there for you. I will lead for you. I am the one that will usher in a new era for the state of Utah, and I am excited to be a part of the movement that is happening here in our state. Thank you so much for your time.
That concludes tonight's debate. Please join me once again in thanking all of the candidates. Jen Dailey-Provost. Thanks to the University or the Utah Museum of Contemporary Art, Chase Thomas, Josh Cantor, and the ABU Education Fund for organizing tonight's debate. If you want to do that, please go outside so everyone can get out safely.
Oh, is that one of mine?
And then we'll come out and meet you.
I made it. How are you? No, I was at the wrong museum.